Welcome to this 5-minute horse lessons DVD, Assessing a New Horse Under Saddle. This is Emily right here. Oh, she's very sweet. Hi. Just finishing her lunch. And today we're going to go through the steps you should go through when you are assessing a new horse under saddle. In the previous DVD, we talked about assessing a new horse on the ground to make sure that your horse is ready to ride. But today we're going to pull her out, do a very brief review of that groundwork, do a little bit of ground driving, make sure the saddle goes on, make sure that she's comfortable with the mounting process, and then start riding her. We'll walk her, trot her, and then go ahead and do a lope. And I will walk you through the steps of what you're looking for when you're going to buy a horse or if you're going to train a horse, so that you can understand where that horse is coming from. Oftentimes when I'm working with horses, I have no idea what the horse's history is. So I am essentially looking to see where the holes are in that horse's development. And that's what this DVD will be all about. I'm going to move her from her stall on up to the round corral, and then in the arena we'll do the riding. So here we are in the round corral, and I'm just very quickly going to move her around a little bit just to make sure that she is organized. And if she right away wants to have a roll here, I would let her do that. This is some nice soft stand. It really is just a sign of relaxation if she wants to hit the dirt right away. But I would, as I'm going to assess her under saddle, I want to make sure that she can kind of move out just a little bit before I put that saddle on. And mostly because I want to see how she looks differently with that saddle on. So just a little bit of having her move off. Good girl. So I want to see her go through each of her gaits in each direction. Here's the trot. Girl. Keep her kind of moving away. And again, there's lots of information about lunging and working the round corral at the website in the DVDs. So I'm not going to talk specifically always about how I'm moving and what I'm doing with my rope, but those are all exercises that you can work with on your own. I'm going to ask her to change direction real quickly before I ask her to move off into her next gait, which will be a lope if you're a Western rider, or a canter if you're a dressage or English rider. Good girl. Just letting her warm up. This is the first that she's been out today, and she's had a day or two off as well. So I want to see what kind of energy she has. And I want to see if there's any real attitude. Oh, she just had a little spook. She saw one of the other horses over there. Oh my. Just heard a chicken. And I'm going to ask for a change of direction again here. I'm just going to walk straight back. Kind of ask her to move off. Good girl. And now I'm going to go ahead and ask for my lope. Good girl. I want to see if there's any kicking out at me. Make sure that her feet look good as far as no cross-firing. Good girl. I'm going to back straight up, ask for my change of direction. It really has nothing to do with my rope. It has to do with my body language. Again, more information on that in some of our other DVDs and segments on the internet. Good girl. When I ask for my lope in the opposite direction, I'm going to smooch when the outside hind leg hits the ground. Good girl. A little cross-firing right there, so I'm going to say trot. Good girl. Ask her again. Good girl. There it is. That's a nice lead and departure. And I'm going to ask one more time. And I'm not asking violently. I don't really want to set her off to be angry. I want her to set off to be in balance. Good girl. And here I'm just going to point my belly button right down the rope. I'm going to back up, invite her to come in. Good girl. There she's licking her lip. Good girl. Kind of coming in, stretching that top line down a little bit. Again, I'm going to keep my hands nice and low. I'm just going to move off to the side here so that we can get a good view. I'm going to take care of my rope. Good girl. All right. And then again, I may go ahead and as in the groundwork exercises, just ask her to do a few things like back up a little bit. Good girl. Very nice. I'm going to just pet her a little bit, maybe ask that hind quarter to come around, so I'm going to pull the nose towards me. There it is. Now she just kind of swished her tail at me. Good girl. Very nice. Oh, so she kind of threw her head up there. Oh, oh. Gonna pet her, maybe ask her to move that forequarter over. Push the head and neck over first. Easy, sweetie. And again, I'm just getting a little bit of resistance. There's my step. There's my step. There's my step. Good girl. One more step. Good girl. Oh. Hey. Gonna walk on up. Again, looking for that top line stretch there as she puts her head down and starts to relax into this, thinking that maybe she's going to work. Again, a little tail swish there, tail swish, that kind of irritates me just a bit. Press. So I'm just going to give her a little tap there on the side saying, you know, when you swish that tail, I'm just going to call you on it. And again, I'm going to push the, good girl. Just going to push her around a little bit. Get that forequarter going. Good girl. And just enough groundwork so that she can come to terms with the fact that she's going to work just a little bit today. Putting the saddle on. Now that I have Emily in the arena where I'll put the first rides on her, I want to make sure that all is good as I'm grooming and saddling her. So I've already just given her a quick groom, and I'm going to go ahead and put the saddle on. Now, any horse that I would think may have difficulty with saddling, I would untie, and here I'm going to wrap this around. And if I'm particularly unsure about a horse, I might even go ahead and put a long line on right away, which I'm going to do with her. And the reason I will do that with a young or unfamiliar horse is that if they're going to move out and they're going to start bucking the moment the saddle goes on, I want to have a long rope ready so that I can control the situation if she decides that she's going to break free and really buck. I don't want her to be mindlessly bucking in the arena. So I'm going to just give a little bit of friction here. So if she has somewhere to go, I can go ahead and grab this as this starts to feed out. I don't think that she's going to go anywhere. I've had the saddle on her a couple of times, but it's always good to be safe. So I'm going to go ahead and toss that up. And what I didn't see there was her head popping up. Instead, I saw her just nibbling on the saddle. Good girl. And I don't have a problem with that at all. Now, if I need to control her, there I am saying, hey, can you pay attention to me, please, rather than something else out there. The fact that she is looking out there tells me that she's really relatively comfortable with the saddling process. I'll always let a horse kind of smell, sniff, and even bite. This saddle is very much a training saddle. It gets dropped in the dirt all the time, gets stomped on by horses, and I do not mind when a horse really wants to check out that saddle, make sure that it's an inanimate object, that it is not going to hurt them in any way. But right now I'm going to say, hey, sweetie, it's time. Here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and swing this up. Again, I didn't see her head pop up as I did that. There, it's going up just a little bit. Hi. Is that about the saddle or about something else? I'm going to make sure that my saddle strings and everything is organized here. I'm going to go underneath in the front here, although normally I would urge people to go around the back. And I'm going to go ahead and drop my cinch. I have a flank cinch and a normal cinch. Good girl. I don't mind when she comes back and checks this out. I want to make sure that's relatively centered there. I'm going to bring this down one, I think. Make sure that my saddle strings over here are falling properly. And as I walk behind her, I'm either going to stay very close to her hind quarter or I'm going to step very far away. And if I'm worried about a horse going somewhere, I may stay close just to say, look, I am here. Just so you know, I'm going to go ahead and reach down, grab for that cinch. Again, I can see that she's looking off somewhere, which is okay with me. I don't mind that she looks off. She doesn't seem overly distressed by me, which is a good thing. I'm going to go ahead and just gently tighten this. And if I felt, again, that she was going to go and buck right now, I would tighten this up a fair bit, even if I didn't get a buckle or a tie on, because that would at least hold the saddle on if she were to buck. Go ahead and grab this. Good girl. So far, so good. one last thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a string to my stirrups, keeping them together, because what I'm going to do before I ride her is do some ground driving. Now I've affixed a line from one stirrup, and I'm going to go ahead and tie it to the other in anticipation of doing some ground driving. I'll do just a little bit of groundwork as well now that the saddle is on and I'm in a different space. So you want to make sure that where you're going to ride a horse, they're comfortable. I do not particularly like to ride horses for the first time in the round corral. I just think that it's too confining, and you're much more likely to get some control of a horse in a slightly larger space. Now I understand that horses can also take advantage of that space, but for myself, I've started horses in round corrals and started them in arenas, and I much prefer an arena. So I'm going to go ahead now and move her away from the hitching rail and see how she's going to react to the saddle. Now I'm ready to go ahead and move Emily off. She's just been saddled, she hasn't been moved yet, so I want to make sure that she's going to move, and if she needs to go anywhere, that I've got a nice long line. And I'm going to just have her go through her gaits again and then do a bit of rope work in anticipation of the ground driving. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of move away, ask her to move forward, and again, I'm just going to ask her to move away from me here a little bit. I want to see if she's going to have any big reaction to the saddle. Too often when people are assessing a horse they want to buy, or a new horse, a horse that is going to go into training with them, they somehow will put a saddle on and then jump on a horse with, oftentimes the sellers will say, oh, this is a dead broke horse and super fantastic, and people will take their word for it, the seller's word for it, when in fact these are the very things that you need to do with a horse to make sure that you're not going to get hurt. There's only so many times that you can jump on a horse that you're not familiar with and get away with not getting seriously hurt. So I'm going to go ahead and ask her for a trot. Good girl. So a little bit more of a head pop there than before the saddle was on. And this is also somewhat of an unfamiliar area for her in the arena. So I can see her looking around a bit. Good girl. And on the next circle, I'll go ahead and ask for my Lope. Again, we call it a Lope because it's a Western saddle on the horse. If it were a dressage or English saddle, it would be called a Canter. Here we go. And this is where I want to see if there's any real bucking. Good girl. So a little bit of like head down, a little bit of irritation. She's being pretty respectful of the line. Ask for a change of direction. I'm going to go exactly straight back. Good girl. And then ask her the same thing on the opposite side. I'm going to see how she is going against the rail. I can see she's doing a little bit of licking of her lips here. I'm going to organize my rope before I ask for anything else. And again, I'm going to smooch as the outside hind leg hits the ground. That's the time to ask for my transition. Here we go. Again, I want to see what that gait looks like before I'm on her back asking for it. Good girl. And I'm not necessarily asking for endless circles here. I want to see what the transition looks like because it helps me to judge how I'm going to sit that. Good girl. I'm going to slow my feet down, put my belly right down the line. You can see that she's slowing down. And I'm going to invite her to come in and say hello. Good girl. There we go. And again, I'm going to keep my hand closest to her down low so that she can come in and stretch. There's a nice head shake, body shake. That's a release of tension there. Good girl. She touches my hand. And I'm going to make sure that, again, whichever hand is closest to my horse stays very neutral. Now at this point, I would start to swing my rope a bit. I want to make sure that she's desensitized enough with the rope to ground drive her. So at first I would keep it on the ground, make sure that she's not going to jump out of her skin, that she's not kicking at my rope. And then I'm going to go ahead and kind of bring it up And since I've done some groundwork with her, of course, oh, now the sound of the saddle there. But then immediately a bit of a blowout. But again, I'm gonna kind of go from her haunches to the saddle, make that sound again. Good girl. Flip it up. I'm gonna go up and over her head. Good girl. And the head's just a little bit high right there. Not so keen with that, but that's okay. And again, I would maybe now kind of go up. See how the head came up just a little bit? A little bit of a jump there as the rope hit the back legs. Again, a little bit. Good girl. I'm gonna go up and then throw it across. Good girl. It's that little snapping. Doesn't seem to bugger her. The pulling of the rope. Again, I'm gonna go up and over her head without her throwing her head up. So that's really pretty good. Again, I would swing it around a couple times. Whoops. I'm gonna try to hit the saddle. Good girl. And then once again, up and over. And then the last thing that I would check would be to make sure that, good girl, that I can go up with this rope, go across, put it around, and that she's not going to be frightened by the feel of that rope on her side. Like, she should be able to turn in that direction, nice and calm and organized. Good girl. Gently back up, invite her towards me, and then I would do the same thing on the opposite side. Good girl. So again, she's doing just a little bit of licking. There we go. So she's saying, look, I'm calm enough with that. I'm going to just kind of rub her head. I would like to be able to go up here. She kind of puts her head up, which means, you know, maybe when you're putting that bit in her mouth, she might have a little bit of head going up. But those are all things that, as you're working with a horse, they're signs to look for, not necessarily an end game kind of a sign. I'm going to keep the rope just slightly above the haunches. Good girl. I'm backing up, and I'm not pulling very hard. Got it under her tail just a little bit. Good girl. I'm going to back up so that she's got a little room to roam. Keep my hand down. Let her come in. And again, just I'm going to keep my hand so that she can't really bite it. She's doing kind of a half lick, half little nibble there, and I'm saying that that's certainly reasonable. So with that, just a little bit of work, I would say that she's ready to be ground driven. So the first thing that I'll do then is put the bit on. And the ground driving is important because we want her to start feeling what's going to happen with that bit. If your horse is rearing and really having difficulty with the ground driving, well, then you know that when you get on that horse's back, they may be broke to ride, but if they've never had a bit in their mouth, that may cause you to get bucked off, and bucked off hard if they do not understand how that bit works in their mouth. And that's why I always ground drive horses. Young horses will be ground driven 4, 5, 6 times sessions before I will ride them, so that they know how it is that they're going to be steered. Preparing for ground driving. Now I've got Emily here. I'm going to go ahead and put the bridle in her mouth. And again, this is a big tell for me with horses. If they really are horrible about taking the bridle, it may mean that they have not been ridden with a bit in their mouth. So she's looking for a carrot right there. And I'm going to just bring that up to her mouth and just place it right there. Good girl. And I'm just going to rub my tongue, or my thumb, just to the top of her mouth. And that was pretty reasonable. When she first came in, she was really not good about the bit at all. And a lot of times people will start horses in a halter, you know, they think that maybe they're going to be, you know, gentle with the horse, and that is all fine. But I think that, you know, a horse getting used to the bit should happen during the initial training, because any horse should be able to deal with a bit in its mouth. Even if you think that you always want to ride bridleless or something like this, really your horse is not fully trained unless they've learned to deal with the bit. The important thing about the bit is this particular bit is a full cheek snaffle, and the full cheek allows me to pull my horse's head if they offer some resistance. Now ideally, as you're pulling your rein, if the horse just feels a little bit of pressure on the left side of its mouth, this side, they're going to move their head. If they don't, then you need to pull harder, and what the full cheek snaffle allows you to do is really have some pressure on this side of her face to pull that head over. And that is really your safety mechanism with a young horse or a horse that's out of control. So if your horse is taking off or bucking, if you can put a bend on them, you take away the power that that horse has. As your horse gets better trained and more knowledgeable, the bits that you use will have smaller shanks on the side of the face. But the full cheek snaffle is actually the most gentle bit that you can use. Anything else, as it gets smaller, is going to have more pressure on a smaller part of your horse's face. Now, I already have my saddle set up, and I'm going to go ahead and go through with my long line. I'm going to just connect here. Good girl. And then I'm going to make sure that my rope is completely organized. I will often throw my rope down and then coil it up. I want to make sure that I'm not in any way tugging on her mouth at the moment. And I'm going to set up the other side as soon as I'm done with this side. So as I go up, I'm going to hang that on my saddle horn. I still have my lead rope, and I'm going to go ahead and pick up this rope. And I left it on the ground so that she could, in fact, explore it a little bit more. I'm going to go through my stirrup, which are tied together. My stirrups are tied together. And I'm going to hook that there. Make sure that my ropes are not conflicting with one another. And again, make sure that you've got all kind of knots and kinks out of your rope. Good girl. And then I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I don't accidentally pull on her face. I've got my second rope there. I'm going to come back around to this side. Good girl. And I'm going to go ahead and get ready to get things organized. Now I know that she's going to stand here for a moment. So here she is, all on her own. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that that side stays connected. And I'm going to hang this here and just give it a quick tie. So that's where my lead rope will be in case I need to get back to it. And now that she is set up, I'm going to go ahead and start ground driving her. Lateral flexion. One last thing that I would check definitely before I ground drive is that your horse knows how to flex laterally. First, I would go ahead and just use the halter and ask my horse to bring its head over, and I would leave my hand here as a target. Good girl, and she's just kind of nibbling there. And just making sure that she understands that a little bit of pressure here coming to the side means that she should come over and really bring her head down and relax. And once she's doing that with the halter, I would go ahead and try the same thing then with the bit. So I've got my rein connected here. I'm going to put my elbow against her neck, and then I'm going to, again, put my hand out here. I'm going to try to kind of get my feet to be in alignment with hers, and then give her a little bit of a pull, a little bit of a tug, so that she feels that bit not only, here you go, sweetie, on the left side of her mouth here, but as I need to pull harder, that this is then pressing her head over. And again, this bit may look like it's harsh, but it's actually very nice on your horse's face because there aren't any protruding bones or teeth here on this side of your horse's face. So again, when you're riding a young horse, an unfamiliar horse, a full cheek snaffle is the bit that I prefer. And the reason that I prefer that full cheek snaffle is because I have ridden horses in bits other than that and had the bits slide through the horse's mouth. Now, contrary to popular belief, a chin strap on a snaffle bit will not keep that bit from going through the horse's mouth at all. And what does keep the bit from going through the horse's mouth is a nice big full cheek snaffle, which is going to have sort of 6 inches of coverage on the outside of your horse's mouth. So if your horse is gaping its mouth and not really being able to respond to the bit very well, it's less likely that it will slip through your horse's mouth. It can and it does happen. So there are no real definitives here as far as the bit goes, but I have found that the full cheek snaffle is my bit of choice for young horses, really any horse. I pretty much leave that on all the time. Good girl. Now that I know that she can laterally flex reasonably calmly in both directions, now I know that she's ready to be ground driven. If she's still fighting this process, I would do a lot more with the halter first and then go to the bit again. But if there's any complaining at all with the bit, that is not a time to ground drive your horse. You're not trying to teach your horse who the boss is. You're just trying to increase communication so that you can be safe when you're working with a new or a young horse. Good girl, sweetie. Oh, not the microphone. Not the microphone. Good. Ground driving the young horse. Here I have Emily, and I'm going to just start ground driving her. And what I'm going to do is make sure that I've got both of my ropes. I need to be very careful that I don't actually pull something that I don't mean to pull. And I'm going to gently put this rope over here, which is going to be at her hock. Good girl. And I'm going to go ahead and just drop my excess now. The important thing to remember is that as you're ground driving, all you're doing is just pulling the nose ever so gently, which is controlling your horse's spine, and you want your horse's feet to follow. Now I'm going to let her back up a couple steps here. She feels like that's some backup. And now I'm going to really take that pressure off. Good girl. And now I'm going to ask her to walk forward, and then I'm going to head off to my direction left. I'm going to swing the end of my rope. Good girl. And I'm not holding onto her face here at all. I'm going to tip her nose, and I'm going to make a small square. Good girl. And I'm okay with her putting her head down. It's a sign of relaxation there. She just went for a, there you go, sweetie, for a leaf. And this can be difficult for horses that have not been ground driven before, because now they're up there, no one's really leading them, and yet there is this slight pressure. Good girl. And I'm going to get just a little bit more assertive with her if she keeps stopping to eat. Now, even though I have one hand on both of my ropes, I really am direct reining her. I'm just going to give her a little tap there saying, keep your head up. And at first, just a little bit of a circle is fine. I'm going to gently say, turn to the left, turn to the left. And I'm really working with her feet at the moment. Every time her left foreleg is in the air, which is now, I would pull my left rein. Now. Now I'm going to say we're going to go off to the right, so I'm going to pull my right rein. Now. Good girl. And let her feet follow her spine. Good girl. Now, as I'm ground driving, this is not specifically a video about ground driving, but I like to have my ropes to the inside of whatever circle that I'm walking. And I spend a lot of time kind of working them. Good girl. We've got a blowout there. We've got a top line stretch. The important thing is that we did a little bit of lateral flexion before this with a bit as well. Good girl. So I'm going to ask her to turn and now go straight. And now I'm going to say, ready, we're going to turn to the right, to the right, to the right, and then go straight. And you can see I'm not directly behind her at the moment. Turn to the right, and now go straight. So I can start varying things a little bit and see how she is reacting. Let's go. Turn to the right, now. Good girl. The important thing again is that she is not rearing, fighting, bucking. She's not working her mouth as though she's never had a bit in her mouth. These are the things that you're looking to assess. Now I'm going to ask her to go ahead and trot. Every time the white leg hits, good girl. And even though I've got her driving, I am mostly using my inside rein to steer her. Each time that white sock hits the long white sock, I'm giving a little tug with my right rein. And I'm giving her a little cluck because I don't want her to think that it means to stop. Good girl. Pull, pull, turn. Now I will ask for a slow down, both reins. Slow down, now, slow down. Good girl. Walk, walk, walk. Walk. Good. So we want to make sure that she's got a slow down and then maybe even a halt. Slow down, slow down, slow down. Each time her front foot hits, I'm going to just say slow down. I'm going to say back up, back up. Good girl. Back up, back up. Pressure, release, pressure, release, pressure, release. Good girl. I'm going to ask her to go in the opposite direction. I'm going to move my body over here, pull my left rein, see if I can get a trot in the opposite direction. Good girl. Now in this direction, I am going to ask for my trot. When the inside hind leg hits the ground, that's when I would cluck. Good girl. A little bit of head popping there. Again, very gentle with my outside rein, just enough to keep it over the hock. And again, I'm going to say both reins together. Slow down, now, now, now. Good girl. Transition, walk, walk, walk. And now I'm going to say slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. Pressure, pressure, release, pressure, release. Good girl. Now back up. Pressure, release, pressure, release. Fantastic. So for me, that would be another step in the direction that I can get on and mount this horse and ride them, and they at least understand what's going on with the bit, so that you're unlikely to get bucked off because your horse doesn't understand what's going on with the bit. I would also ask a horse probably to canter in the round corral, doing some driving, but of course you want to make sure that you've done your groundwork first. And then the last thing that I would check before I would mount up and ride is the mounting process. So we'll deal with that next. When I'm mounting a horse, I will almost always use a mounting block when it's appropriate and when it's available. Now, I'm just going to let her play with that for a little while, and I just need to be careful because I do have some reins set up. However, before I would even use a mounting block, some of the exercises that I would use would be this. I would start kind of jumping. Oh yeah, hi, how you doing? Okay, so I want to make sure that my horse is pretty organized about having somebody being a little bit ridiculous near them. Hi, how you doing? Now, it's okay with me if she comes back and wants to kind of connect with me. But as I'm doing this, here she goes, she kind of disconnects again to play with that. Yeah, hi, sweetie. So if she can't really deal with this kind of jumping, then you know that she's going to have a little bit more trouble with the mounting process as well. Oh, see how the head comes up? And what I can do now is say, hey, look, I'm just really inviting you to relax. So I'm going to use my lateral flexion then as a form of communication. Hi, how you doing? Good girl, okay? So when I see that head go up, I can again say, look, I don't mean you any harm. Hi, good girl, no harm. I'm going to rub the saddle a little bit, make some noise. I don't need to be particularly obnoxious right now. And again, just a little bit of nibbly there. Head popping up. Those are all things that I don't particularly like to see. I'm just going to take an item out of my pocket, which is making a little jiggle. Good, there we go. So as she seems to be more organized about me jumping, then I might even kind of put a little weight up. Good girl. All right. So when that head goes down and she more or less ignores me, that's when I know that it's time to go ahead and actually try to do little half mounts. Now, I try to be pretty obnoxious with the mounting block. I don't want to sort of gingerly walk up, hope that the horse doesn't walk off. I'm going to put a stirrup in, and my intention right now is not to mount up. I'm going to jump, jump, jump. The head, oh, came up just at the end there. I might again say, hey, look, I'm going to ask for a little lateral flexion. And be careful, because you don't want to bite me, sweetie. So get these things organized. Here I'm going to say, hey, I don't want you to, she's doing a little scratch right there. I want to make sure she's not going to grab that stirrup over there. Good girl. So again, I might jump a little bit. See how the head comes up? Kind of a little troubling. Jump, jump, jump. I might put a little weight in and then step back down. Good girl. Hi. And now I might do the same thing on the other side. So I'm going to take my mounting block and I'm going to kind of drop it down, kick it over, make sure that I've kind of got a set of reins here. Be a little obnoxious. That time the head didn't come up. I'm not particularly good about mounting on the offside, but you need to know how to do it. Your horse needs to understand it as well. Heads up a little bit. Easy, sweetie. Easy, sweetie. And I'm always ready to say, hey, there's no walking forward here. So I've got my reins set up in such a way that I'm telling her before she walks off that it's not okay. But I want to do this on this side as well because she's going to look over here and see my leg coming over her back when I mount up. Good girl. So the head is more or less staying steady there, high. And then again, I would pick this up, maybe throw it down, come around, toss it down. Good girl. I want to make sure that it's nice and situated. Again, my stirrup goes in, jump, jump, jump. Little weight now. And now I want to see again, is she going to throw her head up? Is she going to try to walk off? Good girl. So I can see her bracing, putting her head up. Her ears are back on me, which is good. There's that head coming up again. Don't go anywhere. Good girl. Now for right now, it is easier for me to get out of her way if she's going to buck forward by just stepping down out of the stirrup than it is to go on that ride. Now, some trainers want to just jump up and take what comes, and I'm just not that young anymore. So again, once I feel as though she's kind of carrying my weight, then I'd go ahead and put my foot in this stirrup. I want to make sure that she's standing and that she's relaxed. Good girl. So there's my first mount. And before riding her, I would even dismount. So I'm going to go ahead and put my hands here, swing around, don't move anywhere, step down, and then again I might say, hey, look at lateral flexion, remember we're friends? See how she's kind of bracing there? So now the outside of that bit is going to do its job. Good girl. And now we've got that top line stretch. Each time that I do that, get the mounting block out of the way. Good girl. Elbow against her neck. Can you come around? Good girl. I might sigh and exhale so that each time she just did a little sigh there as well. And again, one more time. Oh my gosh, good girl. Good girl. And I would mount a horse and unmount a horse even before I ask them to move forward or backwards. Good girl. Next, I'm going to mount her and ask her to do lateral flexion while I'm sitting in the saddle. Asking for the first walk. Now that Emily has shown me that she can be ground driven, has a little bit of lateral flexion, and has a little bit of forward and a little bit of back, I'm going to go ahead and walk. And I'm going to very specifically walk on a square so that she gets a sense of steering right away. So again, I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I've got a fairly loose rein, but not so loose that it's sloppy. And I'm going to give her a squeeze. There she goes, right off my leg. Good girl. And I'm going to introduce all the things that I work with any horse, young or old. And that means leg cues. As she's taking a few steps and then slowing down, I'm going to alternate my legs. So I'm saying right leg, left leg. And I'm, getting a sense that she's not too keen on this. And this is the first walking that she's done here today. Good girl. And we're not going to make that cone, and I'm not going to fight her about that. Again, I'm alternating my leg. Now she's starting to walk out a little bit. Good girl. And the head moving up and down the way that it is, I'm not too concerned about that. I would like to see my horse do that, in fact. I'm just adjusting my reins each time that she does that. Again, when I feel like she's slowing down, I'm alternating my legs to say I want you to keep walking. I don't want to hit her with two legs. It's important that I alternate. Again, we're not going to make this cone, I don't think. She's kind of sidling by it. Good girl. And I can start now to say steering, we're steering. I'm being very kind with her feet. Alternate my legs, keep walking. It should not mean trot. If it does mean trot to her, then I would pull her around. Ask her to slow down. Alternate my legs. It's okay, adjust my reins. See if we can't get by this cone this time. Head goes down, she's still kind of sidling. And I want to make sure that she can do this pattern before I'm going to ask her to trot, which will be the next section. Now there she kind of pops up, and this is where that lateral flexion is important, because as soon as she popped up saying, I'm going to trot, I pulled her head to the side. Now, if she has not learned to bring that head to the side, she might really take advantage of that and really try to fight you about that. So again, I'm really letting her put her head down. I'm not going to worry about that quite right now. I'm going to alternate my legs to say you should still be moving. I did not ask for a halt. Good girl. So I feel like she's settling down just a little bit. Now I'm going to get a little bit more forceful about the steering, saying we're going to go around this cone this time. Good girl. And I'm going to ask for a halt. Slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down, slow down. And right now I can't worry about head position and all of this kind of stuff. I'm just assessing, does she stop? I'm going to ask her to walk again, squeezing. Good girl. Turning, turning. So I've got a direct rein with her, and that just means that I'm pulling her nose in the direction where I want her to go. So if I say we're going to the left, I would pull my left rein, gently support with my right rein, just like I was doing when I was ground driving, alternating my legs, turning, turning, but now straightening. Good girl. This was the nicest that she done on that part of the square. Turning. And now I'm going to very gently kind of bring her around. And that time she just kind of thought she was going to trot off. And so I gave her the first little bit of a disengage. So I asked her to go all the way around in a circle, and I'm going to do that again. When I come to my square, halfway here, I'm going to say, I want you to gently bring your head in and keep your body moving. A little bit of a disengage. Good girl. So I'm assessing now how well does she steer. I definitely have direct rein. I've got a little bit of a disengage at the walk. And I can try to do a little neck reining. If I just lay this rein on her neck, does that mean much to her? She's kind of looking at the wall. Got a little bit of a neck rein. And again, I'm going to shut her down right away, saying there is no taking off. And then I'm going to try inside-outside rein. So I'm going to put my inside rein down. And she's going to complain about this, I'm quite sure. And so definitely pushing against that, has no idea of inside and outside rein. And you can look at our segments on inside and outside rein. But for her, a relatively green horse, I really only have direct rein, some disengage in a moment of distress. Good girl, first blowout after almost 5 minutes. And but no inside-outside rein and very little neck reining. So that's something to keep in mind. You don't necessarily want to push a horse harder than they can handle. And so those are things that you're going to work as you're training your horse. You're going to work on that direct rein. You're going to work on that disengage rein. You're going to work on that inside and outside rein and the neck reining. In the next segment, we're going to go to the trot. The trot. Now that Emily is walking and not walking well, I'm going to go ahead and ask her to pick up her trot as well. So I'm going to squeeze for my walk, and now I'm going to give her a little tap tap. Good girl. Now a little tap tap there is something that I would have worked on the ground and also with the ground driving, is that your horse should not be surprised to feel a little tap on their rump, because when you need it in the saddle, it's not the time to train it. It is definitely something that they should be able to deal with as you're riding. Now as I come down the line here, I'm going to apply 2 legs rhythmically to ask for my trot. I'm going to say squeeze, 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 oh, squeeze, good girl. And that transition, of course, is terrible. And these are the things that you're assessing. So I don't expect that she's going to trot off and do some amazing trot for me. I'm really trying to figure out, what is she all about? Is she going to be good about this? Has she been asked to do these things? Has she been, sat on for 6 weeks in a round corral, but no one really asked her to do anything more than walk? Which kind of seems to be the case. There's a lot of, pushing of the reins and all this, alternating my legs. I'm going to ask again, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. Good girl. And then I'm going to shut her down. Good girl. And that's the nice thing about the square, is that as I go around the turn, I can use that to shut her down. I'm not asking for a big old trot out right now. I'm really asking for transitions. Is she going to get mad? Does she pop up? Is she going to buck? I want to know what she's like, and I want to shut that trot down as quickly as I start it up. Now again, I'm not kicking her to get my trot, and there's plenty of segments about transitions. I'm going to again ask with both legs together, rhythmically. Squeeze, squeeze, woo. So she pops her head up. Oh, that head is all over the place. I'm also really sitting into my seat, rolling back onto my tailbone. Plenty of segments about finding your seat. These are things that you want to make sure that you've got organized. I do not want to be sitting in my flatland seat or my dressage seat, which puts me too far forward. I'm also assessing as we're going around if I could even possibly post on her today. And it's unlikely for these first little trots that she's ready to have somebody post. So I'm going to go ahead and squeeze, squeeze, get your head up. I'm still squeezing. Good girl. There's my transition. Oh, that head goes down. So now we're getting a little bit of a longer trot. I would like to keep her on the square, but I'm not going to fight her about it. I'm going to just say, oh, I didn't ask for that one, sweetie. Good girl. So I just turned her around a little bit more. Again, I'm not worried about the head going down so much right now. I'm more worried about assessing what's going on. All right, so the trot, not so great. Good girl. Now, if I were training this horse, I might really just trot her for weeks and weeks before I'm asking for a lope. But we'll see if we can get a lope with her today as well. I'm going to go ahead and ask her again for the trot. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release, squeeze, release. Oh, so kind of a pop-up transition. As I say, I will not post on a young horse. I want to make sure that I'm sitting deeply in my saddle, rolling back, finding my balance. Good girl. And one more transition. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release, squeeze. That was not bad. I'm not going to fight her. I'm going to kind of make a circle now. So again, she's still throwing her head all over the place. I wanted to keep her trotting, but she broke down, and that is okay. That was a nice transition. Here we go. One more transition. I'm going to come through the corner, turning, and, oh, not a downward transition, sweetie. Squeeze, release, squeeze, release. And again, kind of this throwing the head, snotty transition. Good girl. All right, so the trot, not that fantastic. On a horse like this, I would often be reluctant to pick up a lope because the trot is so gangly and head throwing and kind of snotty and popping up. So I would say that if I were assessing this horse for someone to buy, I would say this is not a horse that's really ready to go and do a big canter or a big lope right now. But I'm going to go ahead and pick it up in the next section because I want to see what she's all about. Assessing the new horse at the lope. Now I'm going to go ahead and ask Emily here to go ahead and move through all of her gaits. And what I'm not trying to do is really, lope her to death. I just want to see what the transitions are. And I would be lucky probably to get a full circle out of her. And there might be a lot of complaining as she goes from her trot to her lope. Again, the difference between a lope and a canter is just terminology. With a Western saddle on, it's called a lope. And if I had a dressage saddle on, it would be called a canter. Now again, she's getting a little snotty here, and these are the things that you're looking for when you're assessing a horse. So she's a little snotty, and these are things that the average horse owner maybe not want to take on. If I see one of my students who's relatively new to horses trying to do this, I'm going to ask for a trot. They might really get hurt. And the reality is, I may really get hurt too. Now she's getting a little snotty here at the trot. Girl. And I'm just going to kind of move her around. Good girl. And again, there's that kind of head throwing. So if someone were to sell this horse as, oh, this dead broke, easygoing horse, head throwing all over the place. I'm going to kind of keep her trotting until I feel like she's at least in a good moment to try a transition. Good girl. And I'm going to keep her moving just a little bit. Try to get that transition again. Again, I'm using a lot of alternating. Give her a little tap there. How is she going to respond to this kind of thing? I didn't ask for a walk. Good girl, stretching. Good girl. All right, so again, assessing a horse is not pretty riding. She did a couple of transitions for me. The one, she did a little kick up there. These are all reasons why to have your seat organized. To really learn how to ride and steer, I'm keeping her in a slight bend, but she clearly needs a lot more canter or lope work, especially in the arena. I'm out of breath here. She's a little out of breath. And so I'm gonna go ahead and kind of walk her out a little bit, let her relax a little bit more. But that is how you're going to assess a new horse, is by taking an assessment of everything that you've seen in this DVD. Now, once I know a horse is not really going to buck, especially at the lope, then I might go ahead and start doing small property rides and that sort of thing before they're going out on the trail. But it's a good idea to make sure that you've got all of those gaits under your belt before you're going out and really trying a horse on the trail. Now that I've assessed Emily, again, she has some pretty big holes in her development so far. She needs a lot more work at the trot. Lope work is terrible at this point. She doesn't understand transitions. She's snotty about them. All of these things will be worked out in the coming months. And but once I feel as though a horse is not going to buck, horribly buck, then I would go ahead and start doing small property rides. And here at the 5 Minute Horse Ranch, we've got an area where we can go all the way around the house and then back around the barns and then end up here. And this is a great way to expose horses to their first trail rides. And I would really keep her at a walk or maybe a slight trot. And I'm just gonna let her put her head down, relax, let her see the world. Now, I would certainly, before I rode a horse on this little route, make sure that I led her and made sure that she got a chance to look at every last little bit of the ranch before I'd ride her. So we have horses over here, and as I make my little loop, again, I just want to make sure that she's coming up directly in the center of the gates that I have to go through. I want to make sure to keep an eye out for anything that may set her off, and I always have two hands on my reins. Right now she's looking at the tarps over here that are covering some dirt. There's birds flying. All of these things can really set a horse off. So I make sure that I'm really ready with two hands on my reins for these first rides. Slow down, slow down, slow down. Good girl. And I'm just going to let her stand here for a moment, kind of relax. Good girl. You can see her ears are very much forward right now. And then I'm going to go ahead and see if I can't dismount. So there you have it, assessing a new horse under saddle. It wasn't necessarily pretty, but those are the tasks that you need to ask a horse. A horse that needs a lot of training or a little bit of training. And you can see, like on the ground, oh, she's so sweet. She's chewing on things. She's smelling me. She's licking me. She's biting me a little bit. But you could see that when I was asking her to change her gaits, especially at the lope, at the trot, a lot of head throwing, tail swishing, meaning that she really needs a lot of time under saddle. And these are the things that you need to know as a horse owner. So I hope you enjoyed these segments about assessing your horse under saddle, and look to our other segments about all other aspects of horseback riding.